did a change in federal policy in the 1880s influence Shalako, and how did it change? A change in federal policy needed a change before 1880 to be effective. For any federal policy to have any influence on any Native people's lives, you would need to start in 1871 when the House of Representatives ended recognition of individual tribes. This concluded the 100-year-old practice of making treaties. This led to what we know as the Dawes Act in 1887, which was a policy designed to assimilate Native people into mainstream American society. One way of doing so was by giving land allotments of Native land, which then could be sold to non-Native people. This in turn led to the building of places such as Carlisle and Chilocco. How Native legacies exist in multiple and conflicting ways, specifically tormenting Natives in the early days of Chilocco, where colonial people stated they were helping Native people. It was actually just regimented work school where non-natives acquired indentured servants. Positive and negative experiences existing simultaneously at Shalako in the earlier days of the school, students had a microscopic social life. This social life only consisted of athletics, band, and dances when they were held. At the time, Lawrence E. Corelli became the superintendent. Shalako entered the Corelli era, a more humanitarianistic approach, along with better attention to the welfare of the students, as well as the educational offerings when they continued to grow. Any spare time the students had outside, they would make fires, parch corn, and organize stomp dances. By the 30s, students were allowed to intermingle with one another. Assimilation practices that the federal government had participated in with the creation of the Indian boarding schools were isolation tactics, cutting of hair, and denying natives from using their native language. Other assimilation practices were things such as forced labor and labeled as education. Policies and practices in Chilocco before and after the Merriam and Kennedy Report. The Merriam Report was published in 1928, and the Merriam Report focused solely on sanitary aspects of the boarding school. The Kennedy Report was published in 1969. This focused on labor and public and welfare aspects of the boarding school. Both of these reports worked hand in hand with one another. These reports criticized federally funded Native boarding schools for their unsanitary conditions, the overcrowding, and lack of education after these reports were published, and they changed Shalako for the better. Through a historical look at Shalako, a connection of modern Native identity can be made. While Shalako started out as a federally funded Native labor run camp and boarding school, in its earlier years, Shalako slowly started to evolve into a legitimate school and became a collective hub for modern Native culture and practice, and its identity grew.